recording this.
So let's start our session with one formal question. Which state do you think has highest number of staples in India? Okay, so your answer is Gujarat. But what happens is when we answer this question, what we have in our mind is which state have you seen having the most impressive staples? But the question is on number, not impression. So what you probably have is Rani and Adlas Kawa. Okay, but the question is highest number of staples. And obviously, the obvious question that our initiative claims is Maharashtra, right? Because we have documented 750 so far. Okay, so 750 so far. So naturally, we would claim that Maharashtra has highest number of staples. And then that leads to the second question: how many have you seen? So you have seen 7. Oh, okay. So you have seen. Okay. So these are the questions that actually came to mind of a guy called as. आगे बढ़ेगा? Okay. Okay. So this is the dude who actually faced this question. You can't see his face. He's Rohan Kare, and he took career break in these durations. And that's the question that he started with, thinking how many staples we have, what kind of staples in Maharashtra, what happened to food all over Maharashtra. So at that time I was in rural Vidarbha due to COVID, and we saw he would travel to Jalgaon and Aurangabad and Satara and Parabani and all the way. And then he ended up mapping 400. By the time he hit 100 to 100, a small task to map hundreds of staples. Gave birth to Maharashtra Baro Mohim and Arch team. Okay, so we have a district-wise team, and there are cross-disciplinary which we have composed, which includes architects and conservation architects, historians, water, people from water management and government bodies and all. So what has that resulted today is we have mapped 1750 plus. And mind you, our team, personally, Rohan has not even explored whole of Maharashtra. So as of yesterday, somebody reported one staple in Vidarbha region. So this number is likely to be far higher. So you could go to this website later time and then you can check. So we have kind of filled Maharashtra with all these blue pins. That's the beauty. Now, what happens is when you get into initiative like this, okay, you have to, so it cannot become a meaningful initiative unless you have a systematic documentation in place. Okay, it's one thing to go around saying, wow, I love Stepwells, let me go around, I love my heritage, hashtag this, hashtag that. Doesn't lead to anything. A serious effort means that you have to keep on cataloging your Stepwells in a very systematic manner. And I'm just giving you some simple way we are documenting. So we are saying, okay, every time somebody reaches out to us saying, I have spotted a stepwell or wherever in Maharashtra, we said, okay, give me a district, give me a taluka, give me your name. Person who is reporting also gets some credit. Give me photograph. So we tell them what kind of photograph they need to click, right? So one from the front, on the side, and things like that. Then we ask for GPS coordinates so that later if people want to go and visit, government of Maharashtra do some related work on them, they could find out. And then a lot of other historical affiliation, what classification of stepwell that it falls into, and that gets into a very detailed catalog like this. I'll probably jump into the presentation and show you the kind of documentation we do, so that then we can then get into the history part later. So we say that, okay, this is our form. Okay, so you can see as architects, you can see that, okay, the name, district, taluka, and then what kind of shape it is, what is the shape of the shaft, do we have, what is the direction, mostly they are east-west or north-south, and there are reasons for that, okay, we'll get into that. What is the general area, arches, any statues you spot and all. So that actually leads us into a very, and then is there any Shilalik there? If you have any inscriptions there and things like that. And that gets into a very, very detailed database that we maintain, and it ends up resulting into some beautiful catalog like this. Okay, so when you go to our website, you'll end up getting data represented like this. What I showed you is how we collect it. How we present it is as beautiful as this. What it means is tomorrow, if somebody wants to go and see that, okay, how many brick built stepwells are there in Maharashtra, you could go and say, okay, by brick, how many are there? Or by dynasty. So dynastic affiliations are obviously tentative because not all staples are inscribed, right? You don't have something written on each staples. So they are tentative, but you could say that, okay, Yadava or Western Chalukya era, how many of them are there? So like this, you could go and search. Uh, and in some cases, what has happened is the fact that we are also visually documenting them helps conservation architects. So here we have given one example between Jalna and Satara. Now they are built on the same architecture plan. Okay, so if the right one is damaged and you want to now then not rebuild it, restore it, now you have a exact parallel and you just don't have one parallel. So imagine when you are say 1750, you'll have at least 10 to 12 such similar stepwells. You could go then study the stone and the whole joints and everything, and then you could conserve it. And this is one very systematic data that we are providing to all future conservation architects. Okay, so that's the point we wanted to make here. Uh, Now that I've covered on the importance of documentation and also I'm encouraging you guys when you graduate or even while you do your projects to actually look at this database and pick up some projects that you think are meaningful and join the movement. Now we'll get on to the yeah. So before I get into the detailed cultural significance of stepwell, I think we have to also understand that when you talk of a civilization, you're essentially talking of a water body because you cannot imagine a settlement without access to water. And that's why I asked you, what kind of web series have you seen? If you've seen, movies and web series in last 10 years, those historical ones. So you would see that, it ends up fighting over rivers or dams or, some sort of oasis. If you've seen Chinese movies, there is always an oasis in Gobi Desert and your hero travels there. Civilization, obviously, we know cannot exist without water body. But then what do we do with water? Obviously, we consume it. We use it for harvesting. A human mind cannot just stop it there. We would want to create some memorable experience around it. So when we think of water bodies, we end up constructing things. What kind of things? I'll leave it open to you. But we would want some sort of aesthetics also built into that. Uh, it also represents our knowledge of the geography. Imagine digging well at a random. That's, that's almost like you go to some random spot in the ground and start digging and expect that find water there. That's almost like I drop you in Telegaon Davade and ask you to open your Tinder. You will not find any match. Right? So that's the practical. So you have to actually be at a place where there is a high probability that you can spot something. This explains your knowledge of hydrology, right? It explains your knowledge of soil. Okay. And once you spot the water, okay, you have to take it out. And that's where your first versions of builders and architects have started. Because now you imagine if you have actually seen a well being constructed, the last stages are very difficult. Because if you start digging there, you use smaller dynamites. What happens is the debris from upside will fall on you. What happens is when you actually spot the water, You hit the water source, the pressure is so high that it damages you guys. Okay, that's very, very primitive form of danger that it represents. So this was not an easy task for any ancestor to do. Okay. Now let's up the game one level up. Now let's say we are saying that you want to construct something around the water body. Let's say you have found a well or you have found a rivulet. Now what are you going to construct there? A ghat maybe. So you find a nice river and you construct a ghat. You construct a nice ghat there. And then what happens is that the soil is very fine, the water flow was too harsh, and pura ka pura construction has just flown away with it. But have you seen real ghat getting washed away like this? You have not. If you go to Maheshwar, if you go to Banaras, or if you go to why you would have seen, why it features into all the movies, right? So anybody wants to tell me the movies which were shot on the ghats of why? A serious question, I'm not kidding. In them so many times that ghats of why and Maheshwar. So Maheshwar is the Batman ka scenes, Akshay Kumar cycling and all that's Maheshwar. You would have seen them in a lot of movies. Okay, it's just that we just don't know. Even though Double Tuka song is there on Maheshwar, so we should go and then you'll remember that thousands of movies. Why why Tanu's Manu 2? Banno Teri Akya song. That's why. Then a little older movie, Sonakshi Wala. Kumar. So R. Kumar ka all the song sequence where it takes deep in, that's your Krishna River. So what is shown as Haryana or some Bihar or Telangana is actually your wife. So I'm not just taking this example just to keep you guys engaged. It's also important as to how blind we are to what we are seeing on screen. As architects, I want you to now those diagrams of what you see here. In fact, I want you guys and watch Andhadhun again. How many places of Pune you see? In fact, Andhadhun, Badlapur, and Johnny Gaddar, all three movies of Raghavan, has so much of Pune in them that you'll be surprised that oh, I didn't notice this. Okay, so this is also an eye that you have to develop. Now, back to our topic, what happens is so you construct those ghats, and there are parallel pressures that are coming from soil, there are pressures coming from water. Stone has its own problem. So this actually depicts a good achievement of our engineering and engineering that people were able to find out that if you have a soapstone or if you have a basalt or if you have some other type of stone, what should be the thickness? How many layers you have to build. Or if you are Barav, if the step well is starting from a hard rock, versus it is if your water source is emerging from a soil. What kind of construction you really need so as to sustain. And you see, most of that we are talking of, they are at least 900 years old. Okay, and their condition is far better than the temples that you end up seeing here. Okay, and I'll tell you, constructing something on the ground is little easy. If you go for ancient architecture, constructing something within the ground is far tougher. The pressures, the kind of pressures that are put into them are immense. And even now difficult because if you construct a road next to a stepway and a truck goes, you can see what kind of 1 ton of pressure is being put horizontally and damage, but it has not. And that's something that I'm leaving you guys to explore because we have only a small amount of time. Now, coming back to our theme of civilization getting flourishing on the banks of water bodies, we know that your water bodies and these barrows and wells, you will frequently find them along some themes. So the first theme is obviously the ancient trade routes. So when you are in Maharashtra, you have to know that Maharashtra in Satavahana era was had a very flourishing trade. The Roman trade was very at its peak. We used to import. Yeah, any guesses on what we used to import a lot from ancient Rome 2000 years back? What we used to export 2000 years back and what we used to import. So export, I think it's very easy. Gold, and resham, spices, and ivory. इम्पोर्ट क्या करते थे? Guys, then later, I'm surprised you didn't answer that. Those amphoras, there are these nice pots you should see. So I'm sure if you have pottery in your syllabus, so that amphoras are found all over Maharashtra. You can find them in Kolhapur, we have found them. We have found them in Ter, we have found near Usmanabad. We find them in lot many places. So that amphora spotting is very, very important. So we used to import that. And that trade was anchored to a city called as Paithan, ancient Pratishthan. So that's near Aurangabad. If you go there, there is a nice dam there, Nath Sagar and all. You guys probably will visit it someday. So Python to Rome now trade would happen. But now how would they travel? And there are those ancient trade routes. One of the trade routes, so a lot of trade routes will go from Pune. So there was one from Kalyan. Okay, there was another from Chaul. There were a couple of them from Sopara, Mumbai, whatever we call as Nala Sopara, is actually Shurparak, which is Sopara. From there, then the ship will sail and Bhadoch. A lot of them are there, and then they would travel via your Borghat. They would travel via Naneghat, and then they'll reach Paitan. And some of them would actually go north. Most famous north south is actually Dakshinapat, where you travel from Pataliputra to Paitan, and then from there you go back to south. So a lot of caves with Ajanta, Ellora, Karla, Bhaje, Bedse are on that route. Similarly, you have lots of wells and ghats and baravs on that. But this I'm talking of Satavahan era. As the dynasty changed, the capital city changed, right? So every time a capital city changed, the trade routes changed. Like for example, in Peshwa and Maratha era, suddenly Pune was most important. So you see Saswad getting more importance, Pandharpur becoming more important because you know the Bhakti cult has taken over. So once Pandharpur and Sant Dhaneshwar era unfolded, then Pandharpur Marg become very important. So on Pandharpur Marg, you will see a lot of them. And that theme is even now, you see that the theme is coming. So that basically gist of this summary. So I hope you are reading. I'm probably have written more on the PPT than what I'm speaking. So this what you call as historical geography of Maharashtra to spot this. Okay. Now, so a lot of what you see on the PPT I've talked about, but we'll still go through next 20 minutes. What you have to also realize is that if you take the 5 elements, water happens to be one of the most common recurring sacred of Panchamahabhuta in all the religions. So if you see all these pujas, archanas in any religion, you see, most of them are centered around water. A very few, and on contrary, you will see very few against air. You practically will not spot rituals where you are doing something to the air. There are few, but you are not offering things to air. You are offering things in water. You are offering water sometimes. You have obviously rituals related to soil, right? You have rituals related to Akash, right? If you are doing Yagyo Pavit, you will show your Janyo to Surya and all, and every religion has something, or you are asking dua, looking at sky and all. Water is very, very common. But coming back to India, you have to realize that, you know, there were different types of rituals associated with water. So I've given a couple of themes here. Some of them were fertility rituals because you wanted kids. So now we are talking of an era where you didn't have vaccination and antibiotics, and where snakes would come and lions will roam around everywhere, and you know modern healthcare was not there. So fertility was of prime importance. Survival of child was very, very important, because if you survive next day, then only you can create a culture. And if you have culture only, then you have arts and crafts and architecture. Right? Unless there is a peace and prosperity, art is a luxury, architecture is a luxury. So that luxury only you can have only when you have fertility and harvest. But it doesn't stop there. Once you have things arranged on level one, you want to go level up and say, okay, then do I have nurturing and well-being? Do I have enough food? And do I have good variety of them? Is it nurturing my tribe and things beyond that? And then after that, then you want things which are out of bound. You want magical powers. You want longevity. You want control of bigger territory. That's where the sacrifices and sacred ablutions come in. We have seen Ramayana and Mahabharata. in lockdown here, you would have seen that, the king does Ashwamedh Yajna. Invariably, he'll do Ashwamedh, right? Because when a dude says, I am the big dude, he has to go on dragon, like your Daenerys, and say, what? Dracarys. But Daenerys is Western version. In India, you don't ride a dragon. You actually take a horse. That's horse of your Ashwamedh Yajna. And that horse goes wherever it goes. I think that much you will know, right? That wherever that horse goes, that territory is yours, right? And after that, then the horse is made, is sacrificed. The horse is sacrificed, and there is a deep yajna. So, lot many kings you will see they have done Ashwamedh Yajna. So, Ashwamedh Yajna is your right to sovereignty, saying, "Oh, I have done." And in all of those yajna rituals, you will have those sacred baths. Even in Ramayana went to Sharyu, did a bath, and then he came back and then he did something. Or these Pandavas did in Kurukshetra. So these baths are very, very common. That's why I asked you about the movies. You would have seen, even in Singham, no, you would have seen the Singham ka title song. It's an older movie, but the Singham ka title song mein that Ajay Devgan emerges out of water body, and then there is that Sanskrit mantra and all that. And that's again why, by the way. So you have to visit why. Marketing why. Okay. So this is very, very important. Why I'm spending so much time here is because once you have something sacred attached, that sacredness is then carried forward to water, and then it is carried forward to water body. Once you get this sense, this is very important to realize why you have so many barrows all over India. Because then what happens is, originally you were born in Kashi and you were sitting on banks of Ganga and doing Ashwamedha, but now you are born in Aurangabad. What are you going to do? So a general trick what you do is that the river that is flowing here is considered as Kashi. I mean, this town is considered as Kashi. So you would have seen in India, you have Dakshin Kashi, Uttar Kashi, this Kashi, that's Kashi, right? So Kanchi is like, some people say Kanchi is Kashi or Nasik is Kashi. Godavari, Nashik will call Godavari as Ganga. They don't call it Godavari. In fact, there is a town called as Gangakhed in Maharashtra. Your syllabus, you thought there are 8 important rivers, but for local it is Ganga. Now, if you have Ganga, then you have all the merit of original Ganga that you get in Kashi, right? So you'll realize what that importance is when Ranbir Singh ka movie Brahmastra releases. So Brahmastra is going to be your introduction to Indian mythology. I am very happy that the movie is coming. There's lots of Banaras, no, that Kesaria song you will see, Kashi Vishweshwar. You should watch that song again from this eyes. Now back to our topic. So you manifest Ganga locally, and then you will manifest it Ghat. Now what happens if you don't have a river? Because originally you wanted a water body and you wanted a Ghat. So what you do is you construct a well and then you create steps there. So instead of one river and one step well, you take water body and create steps from all 3 sides, you have Ghat again. So this is human mind trying to recreate the same original experience in local, and then you are going to say that, okay, Ganga has manifested. See, so you have to realize, no, you put those kalashas, no, Ganpati mein, puja mein. So what are you doing there? What is there inside the kalash? There is water, and you probably do not realize the mantras that are supposed to be read. You are actually inviting all the sacred rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Kaveri, Sharu, Mahendratani, and all that. You will recite and say, come here. So you are, in a way, you are creating a small universe of water and earth there, and that you put Kalasha there. So your puja rituals are not trivial. So what happens is similar connotations got applied to water bodies. Okay. And then obviously once you say that, okay, this water is Ganga and this place is Kashi and this God is what God I have in mind, then suddenly there is a lot of sacredness that is getting attributed to your water body. So now what you are seeing is, so I'm jumping across points here, so pardon me that. What you're also seeing is that this step well is moving from a water source to place of religious significance to a sacred place in its own right. This movement is very, very important because when you see Ranika Vav, you have seen, right? I'm told you have seen. Rani Ki Vav you have seen, right? So Rani Ki Vav is almost an inverted temple in itself. So if I take a Nagara temple from bottom up, you will see exactly similar themes applying there. But that's like a very highest level. Whereas temple itself is akin to temples. But then there are intermediate levels, like I told you about Limbi Bharavin Simkhet Raja. Okay, there are so many murtis there in that Bharav that it is a sacred place in its own right. Or if you go to Manchar or Loni Bhapkar, there are 2 or 3 niches there, just 2 or 3. Devkoshta, what you call. And there were murtis there. So in some places you'll find them, some places you won't find them. So they are then place of religious significance. Okay, so you have to realize that how this theme has evolved. But independent of that, you have to also realize that a general kuwa or your well or vapi or baudi itself is very, very sacred. So the best punya that you can do is donating water. In fact, you should ask your grandfathers and uncles. In older times, asking money for water was a sin. So asking money for water or food is sin. Even now in smaller towns, you don't ask money for water. When paying for water is not Indian thing. It's sad that we have been made to buy distilleries. Okay, so it's an anti, so that's like a big punya. Offering food and water is big punya. That's why you go to somebody and like, "Pehle nashta dete hain, aapko pani dete." So you have to realize how it goes there. Now coming back to our theme of Stepwells, what you have to also realize is that a general well itself has a religious significance. Then you expand that into a sophisticated baro, there is more significance. And then sometimes that baro itself is a religious place. That's one thing. Second thing you have to realize is that most of these temples are near to a temple. Now you know obviously what's going on here. You have a temple, people come and do some pujas there, and then they go to water bodies. Sometimes in local pothis, it is written that you have to take water from that tank and only then offer it to the Shiva there. So if you are from North India and you know those Kavad Mahotsavs, Omkareshwar, Ujjain. Ujjain, I think you'll remember, right? That Hrithik Roshan controversy, Zomato wala. Oh, you didn't see social media? Oh, there is a boycott Hrithik Roshan thing going on now. Because there was this Mahakal controversy there, right? So, now I have your attention. Back to our topic. So you have to realize that in many of the sacred things, we can take water from there or take snan in that baro and then come here. Because originally, if you are in Kashi, you'll take bath in Ganga and then go to Kashi Vishwesh. So what you will do here? Okay. In some places like Washim, I'm giving you ancient Vatsagulma, that Bharam itself is called as Padma Tirtha. Very, very clear. So Bharam is Padma Tirtha. Or in Lona, if you see, there is a nice, no, we are good on time, I guess. 15 more minutes, right? So in Lona, if you see, water flows from a Gomukh. And that Gomukh is called as Ganga. So that's end of story. If this is Ganga, then you have Ganga Bhagavati Tirtha. That is as good as the real Ganga. And in fact, the locals believed it so much that it could be a story. Because one inquisitive sadhu, he said, "Is this really Ganga that is flowing in Lonar?" Then somebody said, "Let's explore." So they went to Kashi. And they took 4 stones and wrote something on it and then threw it in Ganga. And then magically those stones came out of this Gomukh. And then they verified that this is Ganga. Now, obviously, you laugh at this, but when you had no internet and no mobile, in that era, this was a magical story. Okay, so this is actually transfer of sacredness. Okay, that's one important theme that you have to realize. Okay, that you have to realize, and in fact, if you're budding architects, I know a lot of you get irritated by this Vastu trend that is coming into your household. So you might get intellectually irritated, but you have to also understand the thought. So the transfer of sacred is such an important theme that even if you are a scientist, you will put some Ganesha and Swastik and Maruti and Feng Shui there because that's the whole part of being Indian. I think I've covered most of this. Yeah, I think Vastu text is something that I wanted to cover because a lot of you will have those in your syllabus. Okay. So just for the completeness, I think we talked about Harappan civilization. I know most of you know that Harappans had presence of wells and water in Mohenjo-daro. You have seen, right? You have seen. You would have seen in syllabus, or you should see and watch that Hrithik Roshan dance. Okay, again. So movies are very useful. You have to remember. Dholavira had a very, very celebrated water management system, must be in your syllabus. But that's not like, it was all in Western India. Okay, even your Inamgaon local. So Inamgaon generally is less celebrated, but you should read M.K. Dhavlikar's book. Padmashri M.K. Dhavlikar's book. He has a nice book on Inamgaon. Maharashtrachi Kolkata and there is Bharatachi Kolkata, and they are translated in English also. So you probably could benefit from. So even in your Inamgaon or Nevasa had sophisticated water management system there. I mean the pipelines and all. Vedas obviously have mentioned, so I'm just going through the syllabus for you. Have detailed rituals of waters and rivers, and you would have seen, no, Rishi will take some water in hand and then give sharp. So he is not joking. You have to realize he's not interested in throwing water on your face. Invoking a water deity called Varuna. And because Varuna is everywhere. So you are saying that I am giving you Shapa with all the punya the Varuna. So there is an arbiter there saying now this guy is standing as a proof that I have given you Shapa. That you don't listen to my lecture, you will get bad marks. I have given you Shapa. But that's the water I have to go and take it. So dramatically you have to realize it's not just some, there has to be a drama, ki muh pe phek diya types. They are not, it's not a cinematic liberty. That is very, very serious. That's why you would have seen Kanyadan also, you see, you'll put water and then you'll do everything. So that's the significance of water there. Any, by the way, Sindhis you have here? Wow. So now Julelal, you remember the picture and you know what I'm talking about, right? Julelal is shown in a river on a fish. Which fish? Golden fish. Bengalis? Any Bengalis? Okay, so I think I would have cracked Hilsa, but if there are no Bengalis, they'll not get. So Hilsa, so you should figure out which fish that is. Okay, but that's not our topic there. So Puranas obviously continued that, and then you had water deities in itself, like Vishnu is sleeping in the Sagar on Serpent and Ganga coming on. So that is there. I think one important thing that you as architecture students should remember is that Satvahana caves have excellent water management system. In fact, if at Kaneri, you will see that, on top of a cave, they have done some excavation so that water is first obstructed. Then they have created pipeline kind of structure so that the water then flows. And it doesn't disturb the main cave. And then gradually it is led via Nali to a tank. Okay. I am not sure if I included that picture there. But even at Pataleshwar, I included it. Pataleshwar, next time you go and see, you will find an underground tank there. So, by the way, it's not underground. By the way, gadda ban gaya. It was deliberately made there. So, Kerala you could see, Ajanta you could see, Kaniri you should see. Okay, it's mostly shown as ancient aliens and all. Okay, ancient alien karke they show, but it's not ancient alien. They are water tanks. People don't understand that. Then yeah, so here you see, so here some magical thing is happening. This is Pital Khora, and you see this Naga. Behind the Naga, there is a water tank. So water flows from top, comes via channel to the water tank, and on Nag ke pan mein se then the water will emerge. So you would have seen those, functional architecture, and the purpose of architecture is the actual utility, the aesthetics, and the legacy, and all those. I think you would have heard those theories. And these are dudes. Some 2000 years back they were doing this. Okay, in fact, by that comparison, our today's architecture is blind. Most of. So I'm not blaming you, but generally, if you see buildings and water bodies and water tanks, they're like, wow, dabbas. So you should see here. So now, the last part of our section is obviously I have to show you lots of images of the amazing barras that we have here. But parallelly, I'll narrate you a story. So if there is any question on what I've written here, please ask now. Otherwise, I'll move on to the last phase, last 10 minutes. Mostly, I've talked about most of the things here. Now, I have to tell you the story of Indradumna. So, yeah. So, what happens is on the screens, you will see Stepwells in multiple regions, but I'll tell you a parallel story. Okay. So, keep your ears and eyes both engaged. Amazing, no? Yes. So, what happens is there was this old king called as Indradumna. He was living in heaven. So one day, Chitragupta went to him and saying, sorry Indradumna, all your punyas are over. Please go back to earth. No punya, go back. Correct. So then he said, Aisa kaisa? I am such an old king, maybe 500, 800 years have gone and nobody is there on earth. No, who is living on earth now? So many generations have passed. You are sending me back. Such a bad thing. He said, no. All your punya merit is over. Nobody even remembers you. So you were sent back to earth. He came on earth. And we wander around asking people, do you remember me? And people said, no, I don't remember you. Because if you don't remember me, you don't remember my punya. You don't remember my punya, I cannot go back and claim, no? I am a rightful. Then what? So then somebody said, nobody from your era is alive now. But lakes can live up to 50, 60, 70, 80 years. That was the belief. Asked the snake. The snake said, do you remember father of Rama and all that? So the story comes from that Mahabharata somewhere. No, I don't remember. But then he said, elephants live hundreds of years. Why don't you ask the elephant? So that was the belief. Don't question scientifically. Then he went to elephant saying, do you remember me? He said, sorry, sir, I remember two, three kings, but I don't remember you. But there is that old turtle in this lake. He is very, very old. And then again, the belief was that turtle is for 500 years. So he went to turtle and said, do you remember me? The turtle said, yes. I remember. I remember that you are the king who constructed this lake. And that's why I am able to swim in this lake and I am alive. So the moment he said that I remember the lake you created, his punya was re-established in back to heaven. Now you have to realize that this is not a funny story. There were people who really believed in this. That explains this whole poem, and that also explains why stepwells have to be conserved. Because it's just not water; it's your heritage, it's your intangible, your stories and how you relate to it. And there are lots of stories. I mean, the stories of stepwells can itself be a lecture, but we'll conclude in the next 5 minutes. So I'm showing you here the stepwells of Konkan region. You can see a lot of laterite here. No guess, Zamba, right? And you will also see that some of the stepwells are actually excavated within the stone. You see the two on the left, right? They have been excavated within the stone as opposed to being built by laying brick, whatever, stone on stone. That has happened. Now, Pune, Palkar, the two I'm showing these are later. Okay, you can see those arches and all coming. So traditionally, so this is obviously post Bahmani late Maratha constructions where you see this multi-story arches and all. So I am presuming by now they have some familiarity, so I'm kind of rushing through this. Pune region, now you suddenly see this whole grandeur coming in. So Loni Bhapkar, the one I talked about, now you can see this small mandapa here. So now you are able to correlate the significance. Because if you have to do ritual for 1 hour, you're not standing there. You will stand in the mandapa, do some ritual, then take bath, then do something, and whatever your guru is. And then there are the smaller niches for you to keep your deities. So many have not survived. You'll see here. Similarly, Talegaon Dabade also I wanted to point out. The Maltan and all, I think by now you know. These are ones from Nagar area. What you have to also realize is, the Nigoj or the Ranjangaon, the Parnerwala, they are too deep. So this is also realizing that, if water level keeps on going down or if you construct your wells little later, your architecture has gone for a toss. You originally wanted some proportion and aesthetics, but if the water is found at too deep, then what do? You have to kind of stretch the plan and, I think I was able to convey that emotion without using the proper construction terms. I believe you got it. Okay. So these are again, this one Ahilyapur is 7 stories. Okay, this one is more celebrated. You can see the 7 stories, and it's almost like a nice mahal that has been constructed. But this I'm using very loosely. It's not a mahal. Okay, I'm just saying it in a very colloquial fashion. You should able to see because this is like probably largest brick built you probably will be able to spot. Then Dhule region has couple of more. Now, obviously, there is a theme also. You have to also realize that Dhule, Akola, Amravati are also the region where Mughals and Muhammadis came early. Correct? No, you saw, right? Which movie you saw? Padmavat, obviously. Padmavat has seen, no, Khilji comes and captures that first scene. There is a Marathi looking lady. She said, Devgiri ki Rajkanya ko leke aaye. So they attack Devgiri, right? Padmavat. You have to see these movies again. So because these Mughals came early and Bahman is established, you will see that this North Maharashtra region, you have more of this kind of heritage being built there. I'm skipping the Nasik one, I'll move quickly. The ones in Pashchim Maharashtra, little famous. I think Sairat made a couple of Baros famous, and Marathi serials have also started featuring Baros a lot. So I think after Sairat, it became very fashionable to use this. So some of them are very, very late. A lot of them are constructed by Ilabai Holkars and all. So we are not getting into the attribution here. Marathwada ends up surprising you with the richness. Marathwada ends up surprising. I will point out the one at Pingli. Okay, Pingli. It's a very textbook construction of Bharat that you will see, and you have all the patterns that you will have those middle stones to stop the pressure from building, the stone pressure from resisting and all. You also see Charitana, where you have a nice mandapa constructed alongside the Bharat, because this is where your people visit, do the rituals and all. If you've seen South Indian temples, you know this mandapa. You would have seen Belur, Halibid, Kanchi, wherever you go there. Parbani, the one that you see here, Arvi, I wanted to point out at the mandap. Okay, so with the mandap also, in fact, the mandap is so nicely placed that that you can directly fetch the water via bucket from the mandap. You don't have to kind of walk down. Jalna stepwell is octagonal. Okay. Now, octagonal, generally people say if it is octagonal, it's probably Bahmani because, then Islam had some significance attached to octagon. So a lot of their, like Humayun's tomb, if you see, is octagonal. A lot of other constructions are octagonal, but that's a rule of thumb. Okay. This Padgaon had Hindu deities in it. So it's not shown here, but a note from other sources, it was there. So that rule of thumb is at max a rule of thumb. You should see. Verul one is very famous. It is built by Ahilabai Holkar. Ellora, if you go there, there is this Tirtha. It's a very beautiful one. You can get nice pictures there if you want to go. Then I wanted to also point out at the Jagjivan, which has a very, again, a textbook construction, if you may call it. Then Ambad, now the picture that we have here is submerged in water, but that's a very elaborate Bhairav that you can see. It's a very big one also. Then Vidarbha area, now you'll see a mix here. The one at Barshi Takari is a typical Yadava era. Okay, so some of them are built in Kalyani Chalukya, some of them in Yadava. And that's like a contestable claim that people have. But if you see this Barshi Takari and all, it's clearly Yadava because the temple is ascribed to Koleshwar. But other, if you see, then you suddenly start seeing these arches and these brick constructions. So this is very common theme. Akola, Buldhana, Amravati, Dhule, Jalgaon. If you see this upper Maharashtra, you'll find a lot of these brick constructed baras there. Riddhapur, again, you see here. So this is a good example of, when your water is found at a lower level, your original aesthetic proportions goes for a toss, and you can't help it. So this obviously means that somebody wants to do research on how water levels affect architecture, or somebody want to do a hydrological mapping across timeline and all. What you are. So Mahimapur is again a celebrated one. In fact, Mahimapur, if I show you photo, I have to tell you that this is not a mahal. It is actually a barav, right? Because if you see, in fact, if you Google, you get far too many pictures, because suddenly this barav has gone viral. This is more beautiful. Talegaon Dashasar is almost like a dungeon. You have to go inside. But again, it's the same theme of hydrology. Pauni, you see, it's a nice octagonal with small areas. Probably queens were living in all. So it's a conjectural statement. But if you see a couple of Baudis that you find in Lucknow, so on parallel you could probably make this. Okay? Not on basis of what you see in Amravati. But if you've seen the one in Imambada, then probably you are able to correlate. So I'm not sure if somebody is from Lucknow. But if you see the Imambada stepwell, you are able to relate to what I'm saying here. We are back. So I think Ramtek, again, Ramtek is a very rich and famous archaeological site. So there are lots of temples and, across Vakataka, Gupta era and all. So this Kapur Bauli is famous there. And Atsa one is again one beautiful. And Chandrapur, again, you see here, same themes coming in, the Bond Kings and the Bahmanis. So you see suddenly the architecture is changing there. In fact, Chandrapur, there was a small area in Chandrapur Barav for the queens to, sit after the bath. So, but you have to see the well in person to realize what I'm saying, because I don't have 3D pictures here. And then you have some staples built within the fort. Now, again, obviously, these are excavated within the fort. They are not built in a very strict fashion. But the tradition continues. Or even if you go to Pratapgarh, you will have those big kundas. Sinhagad also, you would have seen those kundas. So what happened in Satvana, I didn't stop here. When people kept on continuing that. And this is like the most celebrated Baravat Valur, which has this octagonal bolt-like structure. And so there are 8 8 flights of stairs, and all of them converged into a helical fashion. So obviously there was this tantric rituals and all that would be carried out there. But suddenly this, once people cleaned up this Barav after this Barav Mohim, and then they realized, my God, so this has become the celebrity Barav in Maharashtra. So the Valur has become, because this is like, you just don't have any parallel here. In fact, one of our friend constructed a 3D view. Mayuresh Khadke, he constructed a 3D view. No, you have this. You can go on Facebook and find a better picture also. Okay, but this has become like the celebrated one. And then Parbhani ended up becoming like, there is rich combination of Bharavs that you find here. This one I'm showing you at Hatunur. So this we have deliberately included here to show you that Bharav has to be seen as a complex. In the temple itself is a socio-religious complex, right? Because there is dharam, there is vyapar, there is everything going on there, including the ritual. So you have to see this in totality, but obviously not every Bharav will have temple, and also don't rate them mathematically. A couple of drone shots just so that you are awed, you feel awesome. Okay, this is from Sinkheda Dhule, way too deep. This one we have covered. So the Satvahana tanks we wanted to cover, but I'm kind of rushing through them now because we have talked about them. So when you go to the caves, you should be able to spot them now. Documentation we have covered it. Okay, so I'm rushing through the documentation. So the last part I wanted to talk about is now it has become a people's movement. So A, there are architect colleges which are documenting. B, there are historians like me who are working on them. But then there are people like Shiv Durga Pratishthan and all those sport, and then there are local youths from Parbhani area who have started now cleaning them. And then the government bodies also, right? So they're cleaning them. They are also rejuvenating them, right? So you remove the rubble, and then sometimes the water is found and all. So you can see in some cases, the bar suddenly looks far more beautiful. Uh, so this has happened in many places. Not that we were able to include pictures from all of the cases here, but you see that uh, uh, at least now, if you see, I remember from Facebook that at least Marathwada, at least 8 to 10 instances are there where people kind of owned the Bharav and then they cleaned it up, and now with rains they're flushed with waters now. So that's like, again, there is this angle of water conservation that has emerged there. And the last thing is, then we have also started. I mean, Rohan and the Stepwell Mohim. No, just last 2 minutes, don't worry. Have also started Deepotsav, where we are saying on auspicious days or multiple days, you light the barrows with diyas. Because what you have to also realize that you can't just survive something on basis of religion. So there has to be religion, there has to be a utility of water, and there has to be nature, and there has to be also some sort of entertainment. So there has to be some tourism value and some celebrations there. So you can see now the Bharav, they look far beautiful, right? So you can, I mean, this is almost like a Bollywood movie set, right? You can imagine this. They're so well lit. They're looking so beautiful. And this is not just one beauty. I'll show you some more. And some more. And some more. And some more. I think this ends here. Yeah. So this is L shape. Oh, it just doesn't end. Oh, some more. Wow. So you see, in past 3 years, what the Mohim has ended up achieving is like multifaceted awareness, and it's not ending here. So while I talked about the historical significance, we encourage you to join this movement. And if there are any questions, I will take them now. No questions. So we will still wait for 1 minute of questions before we stop the recording, or we can stop maybe. What are the question?